December 10th, 2019. Aria tiger touches soft grass. Maybe I was wrong. On September 7th, when I'd sent our rescue team, led by Jamie, to pick up Tika the tiger from the Ohio Department of Ag, I knew they said the tiger had been suffering for 4 years with open wounds. When it looked like the tiger would surely die, Ohio Department of Ag seized her and took her to their exotic holding facility, a multi-million-dollar warehouse that had been built to deal with the aftermath of banning possession of big cats in Ohio. I think the vet team there probably wondered if she could be saved, but you don't have to spend much time with this amazing cat to know she's worth saving. When I first saw her, though, I wondered if maybe the kindest thing to do would be to put her out of her misery. I thought maybe I had overestimated our ability to fix any broken cat. Her former owner, Cinda, had kept her in such a small space that years of urine soaking into the earth had compacted it into something as hard as concrete and yet impossible to clean. She had named the tiger Tika, and given the poor diet and lack of vet care, Tika's dull coat hung loosely over her gaunt frame. The pressure points of her shoulders and hips were huge gaping holes into her body. The skin had died and had pulled away from the underlying muscle, what there was of it, with gaps you could slip both hands into. Imagine pants with long, wide rips in them. Her bone and thin muscle cover could be seen moving underneath the gaps in her skin when she walked. When she stood still, you could see the raw flesh drip blood-tinged pus. Dr. Melissa Zimmerman said they had been warning Cinda for years to have the cat treated and give her better living conditions. Cinda would try antibiotics for a while, but never finished out the course or used the wrong types, so over the years Tika had built up a resistance to most common antibiotics. Zimmerman had warned me that sending her to us was a last-ditch effort, and they wouldn't be surprised at all if our vet took one look at her and said, "We need to let her go." Even knowing that, it did not prepare me for the horrific sight of seeing Tika, who our crew had renamed Aria on the trip to Tampa. Aria was the Game of Thrones character played by Maisie Williams, who had visited here during Comic-Con. Aria Tiger would be in, quote, witness protection, unquote, here, so she had to have a new name, and we were not allowed to tell her story publicly until the state gains legal ownership of her and transfers that to us. The last witness protection cats, Duchess, Jasmine, Sapphire, all tigers, and Jinx, the black leopard, took 4 years to make it through the legal process. Aria also had a mouthful of broken teeth, and yet despite being so badly treated and being in what must have been just unendurable pain, she chuffed sweetly at everyone. She loved the new food she got here, and Dr. Justin Borstein did surgery to cut away all of the dead flesh and sew her up. He remarked that her bones were just a few millimeters under what was left of the muscle covering them. Another few weeks and the bones would have cut through her muscle and gaping skin, and that kind of potential infection would have surely killed her. Aria's form began to fill out, and her coat became soft and glossy, but because she had built a resistance to antibiotics, we were having a hard time finding ones that would work to help her heal from the inside out. Unlike her former home, Aria was getting her meds as prescribed twice a day, and her wounds were being sprayed with a topical agent. But even though we had sent the biopsies out to determine appropriate antibiotics, they weren't working. The skin around the pressure points couldn't heal, and the stitches began to fail as her hide decayed and tore away from them. We had to keep her on concrete because even hay or straw could have created a path into the holes with the bacteria that would exacerbate the situation. She had a platform of wood, and her cage was kept spotlessly clean by her many daily attendants, but it just wasn't enough. More cultures were done and medications were adjusted, but Dr. Justin had to sedate Aria again and cut away the dead flesh to sew together living tissue. This time he installed drains in the hips, as they were the worst. That lasted a few days before she ripped them out. If this stitching didn't hold, there would be no other option, as her skin was pulled as tightly as possible to cover the huge holes. By mid-October, the shoulder wounds were closing. but the hips just could not heal because of the hard surface of her hospital cage. The gaps were still too open and oozy for her to go on earth or straw. We had tried early to give her heavy rubber mats, like you see on the floor of surgery suites for the doctors to stand on, but she shredded them, and we were afraid that if she ingested pieces, we'd be doing more surgery. Jamie puzzled over it long and hard and came up with a rather spectacular solution. Jamie and Victor cut heavy-duty 4-inch thick foam to fill the floor of her cage, and then covered it with thick rubber horse mat stall material. Aria shredded the vinyl flooring option, so it had to be redone. The key to making this work was that they had to screw a board down across every seam, so that Aria couldn't pull it up by tooth or claw. Catherine Stapleton and Afton Tasler were diligent in making sure that Aria got all of her medications, including the one every night at 11 p.m., even though it meant setting an alarm to wake up and come back in to care for her. Jamie and Victor provided that soft surface Aria needed to finally make a sharp turn toward recovery. Thankfully, we had built the roof over between the two hospitals that provided an added layer of shade to the hospital cage. But we had been seeing days in the high 90s, so we had 2 portable air conditioners and a fan running on Aria most of the time. Yesterday, Dr. Borstein cleared Aria to go to a regular cage. Her wounds have scabbed over, and our staff have been working for days to clear and remodel 5 adjoining tiger cages for her on Tiger Island. We needed a cage with no high platforms and no ponds for her next few months of healing. All of the staff and volunteers who were here on site Monday gathered to escort her to her new place. She'd been given 3 of the 1,800 square foot cages today, and more later as they were finished with the renovations. Aria's first steps onto the bright green, soft winter rye grass were as expected. Tigers who have never known such a sensation take high, cautious steps until they figure out that the softness won't totally collapse beneath them. She wandered cage to cage to be sure there wasn't a way out, and then came back to where her vet and caregivers were to roll in the grass beside them, chuffing wildly and rubbing against the side of the wall in appreciation. I'm sad that she can't go free, but I know this is the second best option for her. I'm glad we didn't give up, and more importantly, that she never gave up. She is an inspiration. If she can remain upbeat and kind despite all she's been through, then we should take note. This week holds promise of being even better come Friday. I scoured social media until I found the Cameron who was related to a Steve from The Walking Dead and who had an interest in Dunedin. I met her at a planning party for the VR film event that I'll be doing there next month, but I only knew her first name. She had told me a friend had some acreage in Polk County that he wanted to turn into a rehab center. I'd given her my card and asked her to call me about some bobcats we need to release in Polk County, but she hadn't called. When I found her on LinkedIn and Facebook, I promised her publicity for her film event if she'd let us release on his land. So, Friday, Ash and Cinder the bobcats will be set free there. Those are the happiest days of my life, when a wild cat is returned to their birthright. If you're enjoying my diary, please like, share, and subscribe. You can find other ways to connect to me over at bigcatrescue.org/Carole.Baskin.